Okay, everyone, welcome back to another episode. And I just want to react real quick to a video that I just watched. And it's a typical video. I've seen many of these people struggling to pay their monthly bills. This was a young lady. She says she works Monday through Friday, 10 hours per day. Her rent for a one bedroom apartment is $1,800 plus utilities. And by the time she pays that, her car payment, her car insurance, and other things, she has about $50 left. So she's living month to month struggling, single, white, female. Not that the white means anything, not that being single means anything, but the point is, she's living month to month. One bedroom apartment, more than $2,000 rent and utilities. More than 10 years ago, my wife and I returned or came to the US together. And what we did, what I knew, there are a lot of people who own homes and they have spare bedrooms. They're struggling to pay their mortgage because they bought a house that was too much for them. I know that. I've seen that so many times in my life. So I met this one lady. She was living in her basement and she had 3 bedrooms on the ground level. She was desperate to rent out. She needed to because she could pay her mortgage. So my wife and I struck a deal with her. We rented the master bedroom for $700 per month, all bills paid. And part of the deal was that I would take out the trash. I think it was twice a week. I think it's Tuesday or Friday. Just take it out to the curb. And I mowed the lawn, which it was just a small lawn, wasn't much. And it took me 45 minutes to do it once a week. And then there were other things, yard work that I chose to do that were in bad need. But point is, I got a good deal. And there are still good deals like that in this day, 2026. Single people, one person will live in a house with 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, and they're desperate for someone whom they can trust to rent out one of those rooms. In fact, the house we looked at prior to the one we chose, she had 4 bedrooms in her basement, and she already had one of them rented out. And so we considered renting another one, but we chose a different house. So that's what people should look into because everyone is struggling. A lot of these big houses, one or two people live in them. And a good amount of these houses, one person lives in it. In fact, I went in a house. I had a job as a salesperson when I first came back to the U.S. in 2015. So I had the privilege of entering many homes, and I saw this one house. It was so big, it had a freaking waterfall in the living room. When I first entered the home, I heard water. I thought a pipe had burst. And the housekeeper said, "No, it's a waterfall." And I'm thinking, what? And she leads me to this waterfall in the freaking living room. This house was so big, it had 12 bathrooms. And this was the housekeeper. She gave me a tour of the house, and I was amazed. And I asked how many people live here. She said one person. This one person lived in the master bedroom. You opened up the refrigerator, there was nothing. The kitchen was vacant. He ate out. He never ate in the house. He literally lived in the master bedroom, used the master bathroom. That was it. And if it had 12 bathrooms, it probably had no less than a dozen bedrooms. And there are so many people like that. And so, but the biggest resource we have is our ability to sell, convince people you'll be a good tenant. And this lady, this video I just saw right before I started making this video, the fact that she's paying $1,800 a month for rent plus utilities, which is probably ends up being whatever, $500 for utilities. You figure electricity, water, and throw in internet, that's a utility. And so it could be close to so let's just say $2,300 a month for a one bed. She said it was 200 square feet. That's a storage shed. Okay, 200 square feet is a storage shed, and she called it an apartment. And look around these big houses, you know, and knock on these doors. Say, hey, you know, and, you know, because people are afraid to advertise online out of embarrassment, out of afraid, are concerned that crazy people are going to respond to it. But if you present yourself, dress nice, say, hey, you live in a very big house, and tell them what you bring to the table. Who maintains this house for you? None of them maintain their own house. None of them. They pay someone to do it. There's so much of that in every major city. Every major city, there are so many big houses, and one or two people live in them. You know, and to offer your services. What can you bring to the table? You can go to the grocery store for them. You can go to the pharmacy for them. Because a lot of these people are elderly, you know. And I remember when I was 18, I lived in Dallas, Texas. And I was looking for a place to stay. And there was this elderly lady. I kind of felt sorry for her. She so badly wanted me. She lived by herself. She so badly wanted me to move in with her. And just, if I remember correctly, she wasn't going to charge me anything because I was a college student. I was looking for a place to stay, and she told me how good of a cook she was, and her lawn wasn't very big. It would have taken me 30 minutes to mow that once a week. And she was a lonely lady. And she saw that I was this teenager. I was full of energy going to college. I already had my life plan laid out. And just me talking to her gave her energy. And I didn't choose to move in with her because she was a little too far out of the city. It was about almost a 30-minute drive from her house to the college I was going to at the time, which was just a little too far for me. And that's the only reason I didn't pick it. And I felt bad because that lady, she really liked me. You know, she sees this young guy, and she was definitely 3 times my age, and definitely in her 60s. And so, but I had to say no. And so, but there are so many situations like that out there, you know. And but to go back to this house that my wife and I chose, that lady was so happy when I chose to move in with her, my wife and I, because I totally cleaned that yard up. Bushes were overgrown. The gutters were packed. They were packed. And I saw a ladder on the side of the house, and I said, my God, I'm going to clean these gutters out. And the elbow that comes down, I had to take them off because they were just packed. And she was so thankful, that lady I stayed with, she was so thankful that I cleaned out her gutters. And I did that just to be a nice guy. It was nothing to me. You know, I've cleaned gutters out before. It's nothing. You know, and there just happened to be a ladder right there. And I trimmed all of her bushes. And man, her lawn, we stayed there 1 year. So I said, look, we're just going to stay here 12 months. And then until I get back on my feet. And so I did that. Her lawn, it was just terrible when I first moved in there. After a year of watering it, mowing it every week, she had a corner lot. It went from just ugly looking to nice and green. And, and so when the 12 month was up, I told her, 2 months prior that, hey, we're going to be, leaving. She was so sad. In fact, she got bitter. She got very bitter. She asked, where are you going? And I said, well, my wife and I, we put a down payment on a condo. We're buying a condo. And she was so angry. She was saying, it's never a good deal to buy a condo. You're going to get ripped off. You're going to get cheated. Condos are not a good deal. And, well, my condo is more than tripled in value. So, but she was not looking out for me. She was looking out for her best interest. She was trying to manipulate the situation, which I understand. People would do anything that benefits them. They don't care about other people. And so she was very lucky to have me, very lucky. And but you have the power if you can be a good tenant and bring something to the table. Don't just go there and stay there and pay your rent. Help out around the house. Take out the trash. If you're young and you're strong, use that to your advantage. There's so many elderly people out there, who need a young person, to coordinate things. And so that young lady, that video that I just saw, she looks like she was probably 25. The physical prime of her life. And so, yeah, she works 5-10 hour days. So, and there's plenty of time to come home and do more. And there's people who work 12-14 hour days when they're young. They can do it. And so, but she doesn't know how, many people don't know how to use their resources. They don't know how to think outside of the box. And I knew this one guy, I met this one guy, I was on a sales call. He lived in a luxury home. In fact, I think this home was owned by one of the top executives. I'm wanting to say Microsoft or Google. And that was his second home. His primary home, if I'm not mistaken, it was in Maryland. And this particular home, he only visited it 2 weeks out of the year. And it was a huge home. And this guy and his family lived there full time. And the family's job was to maintain the home for this guy. And I'm thinking, wow. And I'm thinking, what a deal. And there are so many wealthy people out there with second homes, third homes. You can't just leave them empty. Someone has to maintain them. And that's what, I don't know how he found this deal, or if the deal found him. But there's lots of people with second homes. And so, yeah, you just have to think outside the box. Look at these big houses. So many people buy too much house and they can't afford them. And I remember years ago when I was a private investigator, I had a client. This house was so freaking big. The doors, or the front doors of the house, they were like barn doors. And that's how big it was. And it was the biggest house I think I ever walked into. But it was an elderly couple, and they had I would say about a 2,000 square foot section of the house cordoned off. That's where they lived. That's where they lived. That big house was just for show. Someone, a young person, a young couple, can easily go in there and help maintain that big house. Help maintain it. Manage it. Be like a groundskeeper, a property manager. And I was just amazed. I think that was the biggest house I'd ever been in. And so I remember I was in the restroom. I had to borrow the restroom, and they had custom-made napkins with their initials on. And it was so impeccably clean in there. I relieved myself, and then when I washed the hands, my hands in the sink, I use the towel to wipe everything perfectly clean and dry. And then when I went to put the towel into the trash can, it was perfectly clean. So I just put the paper towel into my pocket. And so, but yeah, someone could easily move in there and say, "Hey, I'll take care of everything." And the fact that they're elderly, not getting any younger, and they could use a helper, they could use a driver, and so. But yeah, there's so many places to sleep in America, luxurious places, and so just got to think. Anyways, that's just my thought on this video that I'm watching. So I'm out.